So I started doing it. At first, I was just like, I don't want to be a construction guy. I don't want to be one of those dirty guys that do construction stuff. Like I saw it as like a low life kind of a thing. And then as I was doing it and I was meeting all the people I was around, I was like, whoa, these are like extremely profound men. They're highly intelligent. They're family men. They've got, sons, daughters. They have extreme hard work ethic. They're funny as hell. Like the best jokes are construction jokes, And so I just fell in love with the culture of it. I'm an artist too. So, the aesthetics of doing really quality work. And by the end of the day, just turning stuff on and everything works and it looks flawless. Like I fell in love immediately with it.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Blue Collar EDU podcast. Today we have a long-awaited guest of about 1 week. I think we reached out to him about 1 week ago, and he's gracious enough to bless his presence on this podcast. So I would like to welcome Dustin with Electrician U. Welcome, Dustin, to the podcast.
What's up, my dude? How you doing today?
It is another day in paradise. I'm in sunny Arizona. I can't complain. What about you?
Oh yeah, where at in Arizona?
Phoenix, so North Phoenix.
Okay. Yeah, I lived in Chandler, Mesa area for about 3 years, so I'm very familiar with the area.
You go to school here? Or?
Yeah, so I went to Arizona State because they have their Polytechnical campus out in Mesa, and they have an agreement with, at the time, it was like US Airways or something. So they have 3 huge runways out at that campus, and they have a bunch of planes. So I went through flight school and flew planes for a few years and then joined the military.
Really? How old are you when you did that?
I was 18. So like right out of college or right out of high school, that's what I did. I just moved straight out to Arizona and went to school for a year. And while I was going through school, I went into the Marines in the reserves and thought like my whole goal was like, I want to be Top Gun, right? I want to fly jets. I want to go and be a naval aviator. And I was like, well, I'm already in flight school. So like, it seems like a parallel path. And then I had a kid and that just changed everything.
So we can get into this a little bit because I personally don't know a whole lot about your story. So I'd kind of like if you could give me the 3 to 5 minute rundown on where you came from, and then leading up. Obviously, it sounds like you went to flight school and things like that. So if you can just give us the life story.
Yeah, so I have a construction background. Just I've done a lot of things in construction, but my family is also like historically has been in construction for a really long time. So I have my dad. I would go on a lot of job sites with him, and he was a handyman, so he kind of just did everything. So I was just on job sites using tools a lot as I was growing up as a child, and then uncles and grandpas are all like framers or furniture makers, cabinets, stuff like that. So very familiar with the trade world. And I got, when I was 18, when I was out in Arizona, I started working for my first ever construction company as an employee, and it was doing big stuff. So it was working for Intel at the time. Intel was building one of their big fabs where they print all of their chips and cut them and everything. So it was all like, I had to wear the bunny suit, you couldn't have any particles of dust or dirt or anything like that. So just general construction kind of. And then when I came back to Austin, I got laid off working for Dell. I was there for a few years, and then I just needed to do something. So I was working with my dad. My dad didn't really need my help. I was kind of more of just, an annoyance that he was pulling along with him. So we were doing a tile job at this electrician's house, and the guy came in, and my dad was actually friends with him. And he's like, "Hey man, you guys hiring electricians?" He's like, "Yeah, we are. You just have to go in and talk to the boss, but like we need them bad." And so he just looked at me and he's like, "Go." So I went in the next day, talked to the guy, said I had a little bit of experience with tools and stuff like that. And I was shocked to find that back in 2008, this was $15 an hour. So back then I was like, shit, dude, I can't make that work anywhere for no degree, no experience or anything. And so I started doing it. And at first I was just like, I don't want to be a construction guy. I don't want to be one of those dirty, guys that do construction stuff. Like I saw it as like a low life kind of a thing. And then as I was doing it and I was meeting all the people I was around, I was like, whoa, these are like extremely profound men. They're highly intelligent. They're family men. They've got, sons, daughters. They have extreme hard work ethic. They're funny as hell. Like the best jokes are construction jokes, And so I just fell in love with the culture of it. And plus, we were working on really high end stuff. So this wasn't just crappy, hate your job every day. This was like white glove, multi-million dollar homes with like Ferraris and elevators in their houses, butlers, quarters, So we're talking like 10 to 20,000 square foot custom homes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to see home theater systems and actually control the lighting and the dimming and sound and all of that. I got to do whole lighting control systems of the houses as well. So it was the first time I'd ever seen a house that has all these huge panels and they're networked with a computer, and you have to program the house so that these little like buttons on different walls and screens would turn on their jacuzzi or would set certain lighting schemes. So if you walk through the house, entire hallways light up, or like music plays in certain areas. So I was just like, bro, this is the nastiest thing I've ever done in my life. This is so cool. So I just fell in love with it. And I'm an artist too. So, the aesthetics of doing really quality work, and by the end of the day, just turning stuff on and everything works and it looks flawless. Like I fell in love immediately with it. And then, you can work outside. You're not stuck to a cubicle every day. You don't got a boss over you screaming at you. It's the most freedom that I've ever had in a job as well.
So I'm assuming you grew up in Austin then?
Well, I grew up in Wisconsin. So I was born and raised in Wisconsin until I was probably like 12 years old. And then we moved down to Austin, and I've been in Austin ever since.
And you said that your dad was blue collar. What did he do?
Everything. Like, he didn't have a degree or anything either. So he always went the trade route. So he's worked in tons of different construction jobs. He's done plumbing, pipe fitting. He was actually in the pipe fitters union for a long time up in Minneapolis. And then did a bunch of concrete. So like the Mall of America in Minnesota, they had to pour all the on ramps and the parking garages and stuff like that. It was all concrete work. So he's done tile, roofing. I mean, pretty much anything. The dude's really handy.
Yeah, my dad's actually a pipe fitter. So, yeah, technically a millwright, but
Oh yeah.
his trade is pipe fitting.
Okay.
He just works for a big paper mill up in Longview, Washington. So that's funny. There's a little bit of crossover there. So talking about your upbringing, how was your upbringing? Was it middle class, lower income? Did you kind of know what you wanted to get out of life when you were growing up? Did you, have bigger dreams and aspirations? And obviously it sounded like you wanted to go be a pilot. How did that get influenced? If you don't mind kind of answering those questions.
Yeah. So I would say we grew up pretty poor. Not poor like a lot of people understand, not poverty poor, but it was definitely a blue collar upbringing. I think my parents um, were professionals at living outside their means, so they loved to try to have nice things, but didn't actually have the money behind it. But we just struggled a lot. So my parents had to have multiple jobs, like most people, I think, in the blue collar realm. My mom was a beautician, or like a hairstylist. So she would cut hair out of the house. We had like a whole room added on to the house just so she could have her own thing and cut hair and do nails and stuff like that. So my mom's always been an extremely creative person. Interior decorating, quilting, like anything creative. So that's where I got my huge creative side from. And then my dad's just always been handy and always been building stuff, building decks on the house. Like he's just always working with his hands. So that's where I got that side of myself. The pilot thing, I had an uncle that I was really close with when I was younger. And he was like the cool uncle, that was always, he was attractive. All the girls liked him. He was in the Navy. So he was like a crew chief on big ships, so planes would fly in on it. And so he worked up in the control tower, and just kind of hearing stories about it and then watching stuff and seeing planes. Like the idea of like flying was always so cool, and then flying fast. But then when I went through flight school, I was just like, this is kind of boring. I felt like a bus driver in the sky. It was like I get up and then I'm just literally sitting there for a long time doing nothing. And I was like, fuck, this is so expensive, and this is not what I want to do with my life.
Yeah, I think that the fighter pilot thing, because like one of my life goals is to get in an F-16 or F-18 or something like that, and I will figure out how to make it happen. But I might have to buy one. I know there's one for sale for $8 million right now, so see if I can figure out how to make that much money. But it's funny because I've talked to fighter pilots, and they're like, it's really exciting when you go out and do like the fun training stuff. But when you're making a flight from Seattle down to Los Angeles, it's cool when you get up and then you're riding in a bus, you're driving a car across the sky, and it doesn't feel fast because it's relative. Like you're doing, Mach 1.5, cruising 1,000 miles an hour, but it feels slow because you're at 60,000 feet and you're just claustrophobic. You're just in this thing until you touch down. So it's funny because that was like one of the things I was like, I wonder if I should like go try to pursue that as a career, because it's always been something that I looked at and like this is the coolest thing of all time. And I've talked to some people who've flown in jets and fighter jet pilots, and like it's really, really, really cool when it's fun. When you're just flying, it's pretty boring. That's like,
Yeah, I parallel it to I have a motorcycle. I have a R1, and yeah, and I love that thing because the feeling of 180 miles an hour when there's no seatbelt and you're just hugging, you're like laying on a really fast dog. It can be terrifying, but it's such an exhilarating feeling. But how often are you going 180 miles an hour, right? Or like when you get on roads. Yeah, if you're in if you're in Texas, I will admit our toll roads probably have so many pictures of, well, probably not at the rate I'm going. There's no way that stuff can capture me. But yeah, I love to go fast, but I also love to get out in the hill country and go on the twisties, right? But if in between that, I'm just sitting in traffic in the Texas heat, sweating my balls off under this helmet. So yeah, most of the time it's really not that great.
yeah, I have or Austin, my partner in blue collar EDU, he has an FZ09. I've had my fair share of FZ09s, FZ07s. I've flipped them, time and time again. I like to, kind of do those things. But my wife has my car because she's out doing some training for solar sales. Actually, we own another company and we have other vehicles, but the employees are using them. So I'm stuck with the motorcycle, and he installed a quick shifter on it. But it's really, really fun to get up to 100 miles an hour. But then I'm on the freeway, the wind drag, it's really annoying. Like it's loud in your helmet. From I keep wanting to downshift and go fast, but I can't because like we're on the freeway. It's like nothing I can do. That point in between is really boring. But when you're getting to town and you're using that quick shifter, I can probably equate that to 0 to 100 is the same thing as a fighter pilot, right? It's that time when you got to go dogfight or do something like that. So I can definitely see why you probably didn't pursue the pilot thing, because it is a giant bus driver, 100%.
Yeah. Well, and the cost, man. If I'm not in love with it every day, it's so expensive to log those hours because you have to pay like 80 bucks an hour for an instructor. You got to pay 80 bucks an hour for a plane. And then if you were trying to clock 3 hours for like a cross country thing, I mean, just add that up. That's just for you to spend that morning doing that. And then there's all the schooling you're going through and you have to pay for all of that too. So it's just unreal. It's so expensive.
Yeah. So kind of moving on. So you're working, white glove, $15 million mansions, things like that. Did you ever do any commercial work, or was it just residential?
Yeah, I've pretty much done everything. I've hit commercial, I've hit industrial, I've done service side of things, I've done construction side of things. Um, I like it all, really. Like I fell in love with the commercial stuff once I got a little bit more experience, and I was running jobs, and I started doing like big banks, or I did a huge theater for this like mega church that like you see on TV. Like they have cameras and film the whole thing. It's a huge production, so getting to do all of the controls for stages and everything, I really like complex electrical systems like that. Things where you got tons of different transformers and you got different voltages that you're trying to change, and you've got sensitive sound equipment, so you have to make sure everything's isolated so there's no electrical noise. Lots of calculations and just crazy stuff that you have to figure out how to make it work. Like that's what I love.
So how old were you when you started? So were you 23, 24 when you started getting into the, what you were telling me earlier, going into these big houses? You're just getting started in the trade. How old are you then? And then what's the progression kind of look like from there? I'm assuming it wasn't union. Did you end up going union after that, or just kind of say that? I'm not sure how Texas's system really works, but
So yeah, I was 22 when I started my apprenticeship. I apprenticed for 2 years. In Texas, we have what's called a residential wireman's license. So it allows for residential companies for you to not have to go the full 4 years to get a journeyman license. because journeyman is unrestricted. You can work in any environment and run stuff. But there's a lot of people that by 2 years, if you got a lot of gusto and you're really good and you're really smart, and you got hard work ethics, your boss is going to want you to go wire a house, on your own. So it means that you're still under the supervision and the liability of the company, but you can run residential jobs. So I got that like immediately. I always had child support to pay. And I was by myself and had my own place and all of that. So just to be able to provide, like, I needed licenses so I could get raises, and that was my trajectory. I had to make that happen. So I got my residential wireman's license. I think I was 24. And then the company that I was with, I think there was like a year in there where I went and worked at restaurants because the company I was with went out of business, and I came back and worked for them. But in the meantime, I was just waiting tables at a couple of different restaurants. And then that same guy started a new company and called me back, and he's like, yeah, I got the same clientele and everything, but it's just going to be a few of us, and we're going to start small and try to grow this thing again. So I went back and worked for him again. And then I think the 08, 09 thing happened. It's hard for me to remember the time frames, but went out of business again. And so I was like, shit. So I went and found a different company, and they had a company truck, company phone, really great pay. I was about to get my journeyman license at the time. So I told the guy that was working there, I was like, I want to be paid as a journeyman. I'm really great. I'm the best employee you're ever going to have, But so I got my journeyman's license while I was doing commercial service work and industrial service work, and stayed there for a few years, like 3-4 years. And then at that time I was like, all right, it's time for me to test for my master electrician's license. So I'm right at like 29, 30 years old. And I've always wanted to run my own company. I've always wanted to be my own boss and make way more money than just having that hourly wage thing. So I got my master license. I studied for a year, studied on my honeymoon. I brought all of my stuff. I got married. I know. I'm serious about this stuff, bro. I love this more than my kid. Like, I don't even like that kid half the time. But no, I got my master license, started an electrical contracting company, did that for a while, realized that I hated just getting calls and then having employees, because again, I was, late 20s. I still liked doing the work. So I realized after doing a year of it that I'm like, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready to just sit and field calls for people all day long. Like, I want to be in the field. And then at that time, I also started recording myself in the field. And so my first channel was called Journey to Master, and it was like truck talks, talking about running my company and what it's like using Home Advisor and Angie's List and getting fired from jobs and how I'm handling it and when to hire and all that kind of stuff, And people really loved it. But at the same time, I was like, I want to teach though. I love teaching about electrical, and there's not a single person out there on the internet making videos about electrical stuff. So I'm just going to be the guy. I'm going to make it. So I started, putting a crappy mic on that had this cord that was draping around on the ground, and I cut a bunch of drywall out of my garage, and my wife got pissed off about that. But it was just like, I'm going to nail up boxes and I'm going to talk about stuff. And so people fell in love with it, and it just kind of grew and became a big thing. And it got to the point where I've had an electrical contracting company since. So I still have my own electrical contracting company, but I've run other people's companies as well. And so I have that whole running the company, managing people aspect, but I also found creating education for people as an option. And that's what I'm doing full time now is just trying to make resources for our industry so that there's a quality curriculum and we can educate people and try to get more people in the trade, because that's a huge problem.
Yeah. So back when you started your own company, how old were you? Were you like 29, 28?
I was either 29 or 30, but yeah, 29 or 30. I don't remember.
And how was that experience? Because, I come from a background of I've only ever actually had 2 jobs, and I've always owned my own companies. What's the difference there? Because the way I look at it is it's actually a lot easier, and 99% of the time, it makes a lot more sense to be an entrepreneur inside the organization and work your way up to, a management position where you can still be active in the field, part time or whatever, and you're making 150,000, 200,000 a year, versus the idea that I'm going to go start this electrical company, and you might do 200,000 in revenue, but take home is really 35, right? Because you have all these expenses. what did that kind of look like for you, and what did you learn? And kind of, if you could break it down for anybody who might be in the position right now where they're thinking, heck, I think I want to start my own thing, but they're not sure. What would kind of you recommend based on your past experience?
Well, I think it's for different people. So I've always had my own company. So this was the first electrical company, but before that, I had done like low voltage lighting. I had a tile company. I had a web design company where I was making websites for people. Like ever since I have been young, I've always been a hustler like that because I realized at a very young age that I'm limited by an hourly wage to only make a certain amount, and there's no ability for risk. I'm just up to the whims of the structure. So I don't do as well in somebody else's structure, having to show up, having to do the alarm, having the same kind of consistency, but structure. And then there's not really a trajectory of pay where I can increase and like earn more. And so my story, because I had a kid at 18, has been I'm broke and I got to do extra to like make something for myself. So I've always been self-employed because I've realized I can 10x at least working for myself in anything than I can being an employee for somebody else. But being employed, it's a high amount of risk and there's no structure. You can make a lot of money, but you can also fall flat on your ass and there's nothing to catch you. When you're an employee, you've got a steady thing. You got health insurance, you got benefits, you got a paycheck. So you're just giving that up if you're somebody that really loves the structure and loves to have you don't care so much about like what you're doing every day to have to change things and create something and grow it and make it bigger. Then just being an employee, there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just for me, I've always been enticed by incentives. So when I was working at Dell, it was sales, and we had people just calling in to order computers, and it's like, dude, the more phones I can pick up every day, my commission check's monster. So I like for me that having a carrot out there for me to go more and go above and beyond because I always do. That's just my character. I'm always like top, just try hard. I'm always putting 200% of myself in. So for me, being a person like that makes more sense for me to be in business for myself where I can maximize my potential. And then I've realized too, in being in business, that most people aren't that way. Most people want to be employees and they just want a paycheck and they want something stable so that can provide for their families. So being somebody that's in charge of the livelihood of other people is a whole different skill set. I could be super hustler and have this company and work 5 million hours a week. These people don't want to do that. They just want you to pay them. They want to work for 40 hours. They want you to treat them well. And they're not going to care anywhere near as much as you because you're the one making all the money. They're not. So I had to learn, like having employees, they're always going to work a little bit less than they probably should. They're always going to get away with stuff if you're at least not, checking up on them and making sure of stuff. So it's a completely different mindset, right? Somebody that's running a business would probably excel really well at a company as a superintendent or somebody that really cares about the mission and cares about the goals and everything because they're putting everything they got into everything they do. And then there's people that put hardly anything into anything that they do. And then there's like the middle where most of the rest of the people are. So yeah, I think there's just certain traits that business owners need to have to make that decision.
Yeah, the business thing is unique in the sense of because we've had in our cleaning company, we own a residential cleaning company, me and my wife, and we've had employees try to break away and start their own cleaning company, and they don't realize. I mean, they didn't realize that they'll come back to us and ask us for their job back because it's just not easy. Like, because there's 10x. Just write down everything on a piece of paper that you think needs to get done and multiply it by 10, and that's really what needs to get done. I mean, just the amount of stuff that you have to like do just to keep the books clean and make sure you're paying the right amount of taxes. Um, it's just like it's ridiculous. You do give up a large portion of your life,
Yeah.
and you're hedging on the idea that you're going to be able to build something big. But the other thing that I would say, and this is actually, I'm a very big proponent of small contracting companies. So, for example, in a cleaning company, if it's just you and one other person, you can make 6 figures a year cleaning houses. Just with you and one other person, you'll do $10,000 a month just based on the numbers. So I'm sure it's similar in the electrical services. If you had a really good clientele and you were a master electrician and you maybe had a helper every here and there, you could make really good money. Just realize that when you take that next step and try to actually build, it's a lot harder. And part of me all kind of always wishes that I could just go get like a corporate job and don't have to worry about like building this big thing. But so
Yeah, I think about it too. Like if I were ever to go do something, I would go into something artistic. So I'd go graphic design or animation or something like that. But I know, for me to build a firm, to have a company, nah, there's no way. Like paying people is so expensive. That's the thing I didn't realize when I was getting into business. I didn't realize how much money payroll is. Like a company.
Social Security, Medicare, everything, because you're matching your employee costs. It just sinks you. I mean, and then I always hear the funny thing about this is funny because we're kind of turning into business. It's just like I love business and I'm excited because I didn't know that you actually own these businesses, so it's interesting for me. But um, like the tax benefits, quote unquote tax benefits of owning a small business. I don't see them. I still got to pay taxes like 4 times, 5 times at the end of the year because anything I take out, I got to pay. My business has to pay, and I got to pay all my employees' taxes. I got to match them. I'm like, this is not. It's like 40%. I don't like it. But so for the people listening, I think this is primarily for people who want to get into the electrician trade. If we can start kind of transitioning into Electrician U. So you're saying, hey, I want to create this content, put it out there. What's your mindset? Is your mindset ever, I'm going to turn this into a business? Or is your mindset, I just want to help young 18-year-old me find this career path faster?
Yeah, it wasn't when I started recording. It was just a fun little project, and I'm like, there needs to be videos for people that are like me, that are visual learners, and that want to watch something and have it shown to them. Um, so I just started making stuff like that, and I wanted to try to benefit people as much as possible. Um, and I heard a lot of people in the comments too, like, "Oh my God, these videos are great! I wish there was something like this when I was an apprentice." And like 70-year-old dudes that are retired, they say stuff like that, and so that's what drove me for the first couple of years. Um, Very quickly though, because it was a niche and because I'm pretty animated as a person, and um, I wear tools like they do, and I'm tattooed like they are, and I live. They can tell I'm actually an electrician, right? So a lot of people just fell in love with watching it, and it blew up really quickly. Um, but yeah, now what I want to do is like amplify that. I want to get into every side of education, that everywhere, and create all kinds of resources, because everything's going digital now. I mean, the way that kids interact with the world is through a screen, and so everything has to be built with that in mind for the next 20 to 30 years, because those are the people that are going to be running businesses. So if we can get in their faces with technology and kind of grow with them, then we've got them for the rest of their career.
Yeah. So what are these next steps that you're looking for anyone who's watching and they want to become an electrician? Go check out Electrician U on YouTube. There's a ton of really good resources there that just explain everything about the trade. Tools you need, how to get started, anything you can imagine, it's there. So what is that next step? Is it more kind of consolidated online learning curriculum that brings people through step by step? Is it partnering with institutions, colleges to or high schools to get this in front of kids? Because we look at the next 15 years, especially with AI taking over white collar jobs, it's inevitable that blue collar gets its bump, right? What are you doing to kind of arm yourself for these next 10 to 15 years to get as many kids involved with the trade as possible, from a young age? What's that look like for you?
Well, I am heavily researching blockchain and crypto. I think there's some things that are interesting in the VR space and gamification of learning. So we've been looking into VR and NFTs and things, ways to make environments for teaching. Because one of the problems with learning is that when you're out in the field, you can get electrocuted, right? So if you got people going through a school, they need a way to bring the field into a classroom. And I think VR has some really unique applications for that. So that's something we're working on. There's technology, there's apps and things that can help you run an entire company and keep track of all your customers, all the money that's coming in, going out, scheduling invoices, all that stuff through an app. So we're working with developers on technology like that. I think there's a lot of tools and test equipment that we could be using our phone for. There's a lot of really crazy tools that I don't want to talk too much about because I don't want to spill the beans. But there's stuff like that I'm working on. So like I'm always trying to keep wherever that leading edge is and be close to it. There's a lot of products too, like tool belts for electricians suck. Nobody is doing it right. And so I'm like, all right, let's make a tool belt and let's make work pants and let's solve the issue of nobody makes anything for women. So let's make a whole bunch of stuff for women. So there's a lot of things that I'm trying to make that are not necessarily within the educational space, but for Electrician U specifically, what it is it's turning into the curriculum, like the go-to curriculum for the entire electrical industry. Because we have schools, like there's vocational schools, high schools, colleges that just use my videos to teach with. And when I talk to all these colleges, I realize like, oh wow, your guys' curriculum is terrible. Or, oh, you're using that book to teach with? No, no, no. You got to stop using that book. That's wrong. So there's just a lot of that goes on. And so getting a solid curriculum together, I just wrote a 730-page textbook that we're getting published, and we're selling it to universities and schools. So we've got a solid curriculum, and then getting it all completely digitized and video based that goes with handouts and PowerPoints and homework and lesson plans and everything, labs. So like we've created an entire curriculum that can basically be taken and dropped into any school. And it gives 4 years of every single day, day by day, minute by minute of what classrooms need to have and what to teach when and all of that kind of stuff. So that's the big push right now. 5 to 10 years, it would be great if that was, in all the states and all the schools. But my goal would be to go international at that point then and try to tie in with what Europe's doing and see what they're doing and what they need, because a lot of the other countries out there still use our national electrical code, but they use way different materials and they have different methods of doing things. So I think partnering in different countries to try to just see what we can do. Like I just want to elevate this trade as much as possible and get as many people in it, and then elevate the people that are in it, because there's a lot of electricians aren't as good as they used to be. I'll be honest about that. Back in 20s, 30s, 50s, a lot of them were dying because it was really unsafe and nobody knew what was going on. But the need to know and the expertise that you had to have, like it was a really prideful thing back in the day to say you were a tradesman. Like everybody valued what you did for a living and you had to know a lot. And nowadays, we don't require people to know that much. So I want to elevate that a lot.
Yeah, 100%. With where you are as far as going online and getting it into schools, primarily Austin runs Blue Collar ADU. He went on a storm call this last week, so I kind of fill in for him. I do all the back end stuff. So we've built out courses, and primarily we are a learning company, education company, to help kids decide what career path that they want to pursue. So, the idea being we build out courses and they can go through those courses and it helps them make that decision for them to go in and opt into an Electrician U full-on curriculum where they can start to learn these things. So I think 100% you're right on the dot with building out that actual good curriculum, and you're the guy to do that, right? I mean, you've amassed the following, you've amassed the materials, and you have the understanding of the technology and how to utilize it. Especially with VR and stuff like that. It's something that I've experimented with, making the VR videos, and it's really, really cool to see that you're doing that, because the electrician trade, it seems like Electricians Wanted is on every sign, but like every electrician company has Electricians Wanted. They have more work on the books, but they can't find qualified individuals. And building what Electrician U is essential to helping these companies or help facilitate the hiring process and onboarding process of additional future employees into these companies. And people just need to realize that it's very prideful to be an electrician. It's a very, very noble career path to take. The opportunities that lie in becoming an electrician, like, dude, you're not going to make 60 grand a year. If you want to get after it, you'll be making 150, 200,000 a year. Like, and you don't have no college. You don't have to own the company. You get to take your weekends. You work your 50 hours a week. It's great. Like, this stuff is amazing. So I really, really want to commend you for, what you're building, because it's essential for, I think, the future of this nation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I agree as well. Like I think we need more though, right? Like I can't do. There's only so much I can do, but I think we need people in plumbing doing the same thing, people in HVAC doing the same thing, just people that are trying to do creative stuff to get people interested, not so much just there to sell products at people. But yeah, I think there's a lot that we could do to get people interested.
Yeah, like, hey, if you want to become a lineman, we give it all for free on our YouTube channel. If you want a structured version, you can purchase the course, but it's all there for free. Like, it's on the website. It's literally like, here's how you do it. But people obviously like that structure, and structure just takes a lot more time to build. The curriculum just takes more time to build, so it's only right. And if the idea behind actually charging for product is they take it a little bit more serious when it has a little bit of a sting, because they invest some skin in the game. So they'll take Electrician U more seriously. You know what I'm saying? So that's the only way we actually look at it. It's not like we make money off the product necessarily at all. It's probably like a break even after the ad spent, but it's really, really cool what you're doing, what you're building. And I think, the product lines that you're probably going to come out with, software, puts you on a trajectory to really amass the following and grow it even bigger and have like a massive impact on the electrical world as we see it in the next 10 years.
Yeah, that's what I hope to do, man. Um, there's a lot of opportunity in this industry because everybody wants to be tied to the change that needs to happen, right? Like Home Depot, Lowe's, they're all, we're going to help the trades, but what are they actually doing, right? Like everybody's saying, "Oh, we're going to help fix this problem," but nobody's actually doing anything. So, one of the things I did recently is I started a nonprofit, and the entire goal of the nonprofit is to, like, I will donate my curriculum, I'll donate textbooks to schools so they don't have to buy anything to start a trade program in a high school. And then the funding of it, all these big sponsors, huge companies, it gives them a place to actually funnel money so that they can pay the salaries for instructors for these schools, and then pay for materials for labs, vendors. We probably get like Milwaukee and all these companies that make tools to just donate stuff, and then a school literally has no choice. There's no reason to say no. They could just be like, okay, everything is given to us for free. Yeah, let's start this in our high school, because I think everybody understands the need, right? There's not a lot of people. We've all been having this conversation about the need for more young people to get into the trades for years, and everybody's talking about it. Everybody knows about it. So I think even like parents understand the value of it. And I think everybody's starting to come around to that. So I think if we can get some options together where we actually have big companies moving the needle because they're putting money into this and kind of fanning that flame, I think that's really what we need.
Of course. Thanks, Dustin. I really appreciate it. You too. Nice to meet you as well.